Brooding over the village of Bar Harbor, Maine, stands a place of legendary proportions. This vast, sprawling structure goes by the name of Ledgelawn. With enough ghost sightings to fill an entire volume, Ledgelawn lives up to its reputation as the most haunted mansion on the island. Indeed, it casts a spell of darkness and horror to this very day. The spectacular shingle-style manor commands an oversized lot on the south side of Mount Desert Street, 2 doors down from the Church of the Holy Redeemer. Even the most casual passerby can feel a ghostly pall hovering over the old mansion. Built in 1904, Ledgelawn was one of the last true cottages, an incongruous term referring to palatial estates built of simple bungalow-style elements such as cedar shingles. At one time, Ledgelawn was the setting of lavish parties and balls, with candlelight and orchestral music spilling from the open windows and carriages lining the curving drive. At one of these events, the Hope Diamond even made an appearance, glittering on the neck of an illustrious guest. Long before the close of the town's golden age, Ledgelawn abruptly ceased its festivities. The fastening of a funeral wreath on the massive front door began a long era of doom and mystery. Yet the house survived the 1947 fire that destroyed so much of Bar Harbor. The unstoppable flames came within inches of Ledgelawn before something drove them away. The fire abruptly shifted its direction, sparing the historic property. After functioning for decades as an inn, Ledgelawn came under the ownership of Ocean Properties in 2010. Although the great structure may not stay open to the public, it will always remain a landmark to the paranormal. The most celebrated phantom of Ledgelawn is arguably its most sinister, the specter of a young, dark-haired woman with madness in her smile. The story goes that a woman named Mary Margaret took her own life at Ledgelawn when her fiancé jilted her shortly before their wedding day. Mary Margaret possessed all that a person might desire: riches, youth, and beauty. Ironically, these gifts left her completely defenseless to the pain of a broken heart and the sting of public humiliation. And so to the 3rd floor of the mansion went the distraught girl, and in a sewing room on the east side of the house she found her wedding dress, hanging white and ghostly. Whether the sight of the dangling dress suggested the unthinkable, we'll never know. But what happened next is a legend. Decking herself out in the wedding gown, Mary Margaret hung herself by attaching the long veil to the beams of the sloping ceiling. That is where her family later found her, a ghostly parody of the blushing bride. Mary Margaret's face was so bruised that she was nearly unrecognizable. The final horror was the grotesque smile twisting the blackened face of the corpse. Since then, the specter of Mary Margaret has appeared on countless occasions. She looks almost as if she did in life, young and lovely, except for the strange smile that distorts her whole face. The setting of the suicide became a guest room at the Ledgelawn Inn. People who checked into room 326 were apt to wake up to the image of a woman in white floating in the moonlight at the foot of the bed. Or, as experienced by one guest, a phantom veil appears to sway it all night from the sloping ceiling. Anyone inside the structure must beware, since Mary Margaret freely walks the halls of the old estate, manifesting herself elsewhere in the dwelling, despite her odd attachment to the room where she died. Some witnesses have heard the ghostly legend, but most have not, and therefore arrive without any preconceptions. In one instance, the ghost appeared to an elderly woman, Dona Gerda, who had just arrived from Brazil. Dona Gerda spoke only Portuguese, and she knew nothing of the house or its history. Yet on the morning after her arrival, she saw the apparition in all its classic form. As Dona Gerda was descending the grand staircase, she was in full view of the front desk, staffed by 2 employees, Jamar Castro and Sherry Gallant. They both saw her stop and suddenly began waving her hand and nodding her head excitedly. But she wasn't looking at them. She was looking at someone that neither of them could see. When questioned later, Dona Gerda described seeing a young, dark-haired woman wearing a veil and a long white dress. Before disappearing, the phantom woman kept smiling up at Dona Gerda in a most disturbing fashion. As a caretaker of the mansion for 14 years, Mike Gallant had his own unforgettable encounters with the unsettling wraith. But one instance stands out in particular. The event took place in October of 2000, when Mike and the staff were shutting down the inn for the season. Nothing strange happened until the ghost cornered him upstairs. He had left the rest of the workers on the 1st floor in order to inspect the guest rooms above. Despite the fact that all the doors were open and all the lights were on, a deep sense of gloom and confinement was building up inside the old manor house. Certainly, the darkness grew as Mike proceeded in his work. After he finished inspecting each room, he turned out the lights to indicate that the job was done. During this time, no one came upstairs past Mike, engulfed in the growing shadows of Ledgelawn. When Mike climbed to the third floor, things really began to get strange. A light he had turned off in one room suddenly turned itself back on again. What happened next has etched itself permanently into his mind. He had just turned off the light for a second time, and he was leaving the room when a quickly moving object caught his eye. Swiveling in its direction, he faced room 326. He saw the white apparition of Mary Margaret slip out the door of an adjacent room and float across the corridor into room 326. As the specter was passing by, she slowly turned her head around to make eye contact with the astonished caretaker, and flashed him a smile of fathomless intent. She was only 10 or 12 feet away, so Mike got a good look. In his words, "It was as if time had stopped when I looked at the object, and I began to focus, and in a split second I recognized I was seeing a woman in white smiling at me as she passed." It occurred to him that he was effectively trapped, for the hallway formed a cul-de-sac with only one way in and out. Ledgelawn is home to other phantoms. One of these is the spirit of a young woman who worked as a maid in the mansion years after it was sold by the original family. One morning, servants found this woman at the bottom of one of the back staircases, her neck twisted and broken. Rumor had it that someone pushed her down those stairs. Certainly, she had been uncommonly pretty, and in the whispered tales of the town, she was having an affair with her married master. Arguments ensued, and either the wife or the maid made implacable demands. Then all ended with a sudden death, quickly hushed up in the interests of the wealthy owners of the estate. The phantom maid manifests herself as a feeling of nameless dread, or the sensation of being watched when no one else is present. Commonly, the specter travels as a preternatural draft, ice cold on the hottest summer day, that snakes throughout the mansion. Other times, this vengeful ghost slams doors and echoes the sounds of a heated argument into rooms that are dark and empty. Her favorite place to haunt is the suite that once housed separate bedrooms for the master and the mistress of the manor. For years, each of these rooms contained an antique portrait of a man in one room and a woman in the other. On many different occasions, guests and staff at the hotel have been surprised to discover that the portrait of the man had been strangely altered during the night. In the morning, the picture still sat behind glass, but only the back was visible in the gilt frame. Apparently, the phantom maid turned the picture around in a show of rage against her former master. During a seance conducted in the mansion years ago, the presence of another ghost was reported. That of a young boy who drowned while visiting Ledgelawn with his parents when the place was still a private residence. While the boy did not die on the grounds, his frightened spirit apparently returned to Ledgelawn, where he still remains, hiding in the vast warren of Victorian cabinetry. The specter of a lurking man stalks the servants' quarters of the cellar. This ghost appears as a silhouette, or dark figure that shimmers like heat off of the highway. There may yet be other phantoms at Ledgelawn, for the sprawling mansion sits on the site of an earlier house built in 1876 on the actual foundation of a still older structure. As each house was torn down to make room for a larger one, Ledgelawn absorbed all their secrets and all their specters. And so, Ledgelawn lives on, a stunning sight of supernatural wonder. The shadow cast by this malignant mansion falls over the whole town. Contained within its labyrinth are the spirits of the unfortunate and the damned. Expect to counter them for yourself in the deep gloom of the place. A vengeful draft, the slamming of a door, a floating veil, and the apparition of a corpse bride with a smile reserved solely for you. Hey guys, Reaper here. I just wanted to thank you all for either watching or listening, whether you're on YouTube or Spotify. This story was brought to you from Ghosts of Acadia, written by Marcus LiBrizzi and published by Down East Books. I wanted to give both of them a huge thank you and a huge shout out for letting me bring this book to you guys, whether it's in audio form on Spotify or in video form on YouTube. If you want to check out the book for yourself, I will leave a link down below in the description in both Spotify and on YouTube, so you can go check out the book for yourself and support the original author and original publisher. New story coming out tomorrow night. And until then, remember, sleep well, my friends.